Coming up on this episode, I share some positive news about some trees, talk about being stuck in the cycle of the day-to-day life and not knowing whether you're coming or going, and how I kind of manage it or what I do when I'm in that situation. And then I finish off with a rant about fatigue, which I am clearly feeling from the looks of the episode, but hey, we always push forward, so check it out. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, I want to talk about cycles. More on that in a moment. First of all, we got this week's positive news. So, we got more than 100,000 trees to be planted in Devon to boost the Celtic rainforest. This is from the 1st of February 2024, so it's kind of as recent as I could find. The Guardian reported the National Trust says it hopes to establish 50 hectares, 123 acres of new rainforest across 3 sites close to surviving pockets of rainforest. More than 100,000 trees are being planted in North Devon as part of efforts to boost temperate Celtic rainforests, some of the UK's most magical but endangered environments. The trees are being planted close to surviving pockets of rainforest at 2 spots close to the coast and 1 inland. Global news services views this news as a sign of rising positivity in the field of science, documenting the growth of supporting life evolutionary trends. Over the centuries, the temperate rainforest, which used to run the length of the western seaboard of the UK, has deteriorated largely due to air pollution, invasive species, diseases such as ash dieback, and general lack of care. Well, if you guys want to check that out, I'll put the link in the description below. But it's nice to see some trees getting planted. I like to walk around in nature and admire nature in itself. So it's always good to see that. It's always good to see when we're putting something back in nature opposed to taking stuff out of it. So that's a little bit of positivity for this episode. Now on to the main part of it, which is cycles. Now, we're all stuck in some kind of cycle. And I know I personally feel like I'm on a hamster wheel sometimes. But whether it be the cycle of the week, work Monday to Friday, try to forget about work on the weekend and then jump straight back on the Monday train and back into work and repeat all again until before you know it, you've been doing the same thing for years on end and time's just flown by. Or whether you're just in a relationship and you're complacent, or you're complacent in your hobbies and you're just wasting time and not actually pursuing the things that you want to do. You convince yourself that there's going to be plenty of time. Or emotional cycles of getting stressed out and aggravated over the same things over and over again. I know I'm guilty of that one for sure. But there's ways that we can observe these cycles, and the more we observe ourselves and the triggers and the causes around them, the more we can kind of navigate these waters. It's not to say that we'll never fall back into the cycle again, because we will. But the more conscious you become of it, the more you can kind of say, oh, I'm doing that again, step back out of it. And over time, hopefully spend less time in negative cycles and more time in positive cycles. Now, obviously for me, life's quite hectic, and the last few weeks has been a bit of a juggling act. So I've probably been on the stress cycle a bit more than usual. But it's always going to come around. And no matter what it is, inevitably it's self-imposed. Like I said, I was talking to somebody earlier on, and I said basically, like, I'm stressing like the world's gonna end, but yet it's not. And I mean, even if it was, it wouldn't be in my control at this stage. But it's all my own creation. So all of the stresses that I'm putting on myself, all the rushing around and the hecticness and that, don't get me wrong, some of it is just like, it never rains but it pours. All of life kind of hits at once sometimes. But again, you can still only deal with one thing at a time. You're only one person, you can only be present in one place. So you can only do so much. So constantly trying to remind myself when I'm in these cycles that, one, I'm in a cycle to begin with. So then that kind of makes me realise that, oh cool, I've been here before. That kind of helps me slow down a little bit. And then once I've realised that, I can kind of not always pull myself out of it, but at least start to take steps to get out of it, or start to position myself in a place where I can get out of it, or write it out. Sometimes you just got to call it a day. Like yesterday, there was no way I was going to find time to record or anything. I ended up having an early night, had my daughter in bed by like early doors for her anyway. I went to sleep not long after she did, and that's rare for me. Normally I'm up for a couple of hours after she goes to sleep. But that's the thing, that's to say that there are good cycles. So like, when I'm in the routine of doing a couple of hours of work before she's awake and then a couple of hours of work after she goes to bed, I find that a good cycle. Like, again, it's work on my own projects and everything else, and at the minute, that's not what's keeping the lights on. So I've still got to stress elsewhere for that, but again, it's part and parcel. It's nothing I haven't done before. Like, sometimes when you get overwhelmed, even what you do on a regular basis can seem overwhelming because everything's just too on top of you. So like, literally earlier on, I was being pulled around and everything else, and I was literally so I just need 5 minutes. I just need a minute by myself. And it was just so I could collect my thoughts and say, okay, cool, like, be present here. These thoughts don't need to be in your mind now, or you can't do anything about this, that, or whatever else. So just being conscious of what you can and can't control sometimes help break the cycle. Don't get me wrong, it won't always, but sometimes it does. And I think the biggest thing I can say is, the more conscious you are of your habits and cycles, the more you can work on breaking them, and at least become conscious of when you're doing them, and then you can kind of nudge yourself towards doing something for the better, opposed to a negative cycle. Like I say, like, I think we're all out for a better life, and hopefully we can check ourselves when we need to. There's so many people that let themselves get complacent, and in my experience, complacency leads to negative things, for lack of a better way of putting it. But I'm coming to the end of my own cycle and I'm absolutely exhausted. So I'm going to wrap this one up with a little rant. This week's rant is going to be about fatigue, simply because I'm clearly going through it, as you can see from the past, however long this episode's been. Like, no matter how much you do, no matter how many boxes you try to tick, like, I'm even forcing an energy drink down my throat. Well, I'm not forcing it, I like energy drink. But I'm even having energy drink just to try to perk myself up, but it doesn't work. Like, sometimes your mind just checks out. Now, I won't let myself miss my targets and everything else, so I'll push forward regardless. But my God, there's the fatigue and the mental drain, and I literally spent minutes just staring at the camera with no words because my mind's just that fatigued. But we compose ourselves and we bring ourselves back in and we get there. And I think that's the be all and end all of it, is we get the work done regardless. So I'm going to wrap the episode up there because I really am just done for today. The seed for this episode is going to be, even though you'll have your ups and downs, and trust me, the downs will feel rough, you'll get there. Don't lose hope and don't give up. Keep putting in the work, and no matter what, if you're consistent, if you keep showing up, you'll get there. All the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.